I am Victoria L. Burson. This is Leadership on the Go. Leadership is not always preparedness for the unknown, but it is tapping into the unknown prepared. You're muted, Victoria.
Sorry about that. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I have to laugh at myself. Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining Essentials Unleashed, where we enlighten, empower, and encourage people to live on purpose and lead with passion. Tonight is going down like four flat tires. We have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful conversation this evening with two extraordinary women that I admire and I look up to, and they are bad sisters. We begin with Teresa L. Smallwood, Dr. Teresa L. Smallwood from Vanderbilt Divinity School. She is a powerful, powerful sister, and we're just going to bring her on right now. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Teresa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Let us introduce our next guest, Dr. Marketa Carmichael from Virginia University, and this woman is a bad sister as well. Let's bring her on. Good evening, Dr. Marketa. How are you?
I am well, Reverend Victoria. It is good to see you again. And Dr. Teresa, good to see you tonight.
Amen. Amen. And so listen, tonight is going to be an extraordinary conversation. I have women who are here who have done the work of self-care. Tonight's topic of installment tonight is self-care, reimagining self-care, reimagining self-care. So tonight, you know, and I don't want to discount. Let me just put that out there. Let me put this caveat out there. We're not discounting massages and double baths and glass of wines and all that. Of course, that is a great part of it. But we want to reimagine as we are in unprecedented, unparalleled, and uncharted era right now, and that leaders today are trying to find ways to cope. And the only way we're going to find ways to cope is that we have to reimagine being on lockdown in our homes. Some of us who have lost our jobs, some of us who are doing more than we normally do, whether it's with the kids, having to do homeschool and the computer issues with the schools and all that. The dynamics are huge. And people, and I am not an expert on mental illness. Let me just say that right now. We are not dealing with mental illness. We're dealing with reimagining self-care because we've done that. A lot of us have done that work before COVID, during COVID, and we're going to learn how to do that work even post-COVID. So I want to go ahead and get this conversation started, which is, again, reimagining self-care. Is a conversation around ways in which leaders can conceptualize their individuality as well as revolutionize their sense of agency as it relates to how they exist in the world or how we live on purpose. All right. And so how do we show up for ourselves, our being, our work, our relationship, our next steps amid COVID-19? So let's get this conversation started. Before we start in the conversation, though, I want Dr. Teresa Smallwood to come on and tell us a little bit. Don't cheat the people. Get about 2 minutes. Tell us who you are, what you do, and what you're involved with right now as it relates to your work that you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I am delighted to be here. Self-care is a very important topic for me, and it starts with me having grown up in a very rural agrarian setting in northeastern North Carolina, where basically black women were basically the people in charge of everything, including the household, and some of them were the ones who did everything it took to make households run. So it was very interesting that over my lifetime, and of course, I graduated in '78, went on to UNC Chapel Hill to get an undergraduate degree and then a law degree at North Carolina Central. And I practiced law in Northeastern North Carolina for about 20 years before going into what they called, at that time, basically my own practice. And then after that, several series of very serious things happened in my life that caused me really to go inward. And of course, I went back to school to get my Master's of Divinity and on to get the PhD. And now I'm working at Vanderbilt Divinity School, my first job out of the PhD, as a postdoctoral fellow and someone who's running as the day-to-day operations, the associate director of the Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative. But those things all create a sort of link. And it's a link to the self-interest I have about not only myself, but my people. In order to really care about your people, you have to care about yourself first. And so that's sort of my orientation. We'll get into that more deeply, but that's who I am and what I do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teresa. Wonderful. Ooh, I'm so excited. Lord have mercy. Yes, 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 yes. Dr. Marketa Carmichael.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I again echo with Dr. Teresa. I thank you, Victoria, just for the opportunity to be here and to share and to just be a part of this rich conversation. I am first generation born out of the South meaning Alabama. My family is from the Birmingham and Anniston area. I was born in Washington, D.C., so I'm coming from the Northern Virginia area in context. And I have a work that I did for my dissertation. It's entitled Leaving Absalom's House. And it is self-care for African-American clergy women specifically who are adult survivors of childhood sexual assault and their methods of self-care. So this work really is about how do we care for ourselves as Black women and as Black people when we do this work as womanists. How do we frame the conversation in such a way that it deals directly with what we need and what we can prescribe for ourselves. And it doesn't necessarily have to always be white Western methodologies. So that's my launching pad.
All right. All right. Oh, this is wonderful. Wonderful. This is great. And so let's begin our conversation. So the first conversation I want to have is both of you named and kind of named this whole necessity for how we do self-care, particularly around Black women, the ways in which we show up as African-American women or people of color, particularly as leaders, women leaders in the earth, right? And so how do we show up for ourselves and our being right now? Just our being, how does existentialism show up in us individually? And so we'll start with you, Dr. Smallwood. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Listen, so much of what I talk about in the first words here has to do with how we have been framed as women, particularly. There is this sort of mantra or trope around strong Black woman. And I really do believe that we are strong women. But I think it is important in this moment to get in touch with our vulnerabilities and to be willing to accept that we're not strong all the time. And in fact, it's in our weakness that the true strength is made perfect. So one of the things that I am very convinced of is that it's okay to be soft. It's okay, to need to cry, to lament, and to consider yourself someone who is worth the ability to emote.
So talk a little bit more about it being okay to lament, because really all of us on here and most of the women I know in my life and then my mother, et cetera, women are strong. I mean, we're strong. I mean, women, period, whether it be white women, Latino women, Mexican women, Asian women, we're strong. I mean, women in general are strong, but What are you saying when you're saying a lot when you say it's okay to lament, but I need you to really break that down for me. What does that mean? And how, because I know you a strong sister. So how has that played out in your world? And how have you been able to lament? Because in the last 10 years, I've learned how to be soft. I've learned how to lament. How have you learned that? How have you framed that for us?
So for me, it started with the ability to let myself cry. You know, and this season really brought me to a place of full circle. You know, it didn't take but a few times me seeing refrigerated trucks with dead bodies stacked up like they were pieces of meat. I mean, anyone who can't shed tears over the things we're seeing, the ways in which people have taken our livelihoods. And when you talk about existentialism, you're talking about the crisis, the angst of people's existence, right? And if I don't have a feeling, if I can't get in touch with what that makes me feel, then how in the world can I be a part of anything that can bring about a solution? Because individualism causes us sometimes to go into a place of rabidness. So being individualistic causes us not to care about what's happening to others. If my self-care does not have a component in it that says, I feel because of what you're going through, then I'm not in touch, first of all, with my own self-interest. Because my self-interest is diabolically opposed to something that harms another human being.
Dr. Marketa, come on. I'm going to let you just go on and start from there.
Listen, absolutely, because I'm over here in your amen corner. I'm saying this state of rabidness, you know, a place where we don't care anymore. When you talked about lamentation and the permission, it's oftentimes us giving ourselves the permission to just wail. And I'm talking about serious wailing. I mean, from the depth of your being, because there are literally bodies in refrigerated trucks. And somebody has to be wailing. It's like sin for the women. The women that wail, the ones who have that intrinsic power to call forth, right?
Yes.
What we need in the spirit. And there are some things that we have to cry out about, and crying out, literally crying out and saying, you know, God, are you there? Creator, sustainer, whoever, are you listening to us? Do you see what is happening to us here? And somebody's got to wail about that. And the permission, I'll use a quick example. When I was doing my CPE work, clinical pastoral education at UCLA, I got into a situation where I just felt like I was just drowning. And I felt like I needed to just cry. But you know how you have that rock or stone somewhere in here that is trying to block you from crying? And the supervisor at the time, Karen Schnell, said to me, what is the worst thing that'll happen if you start crying? I said, I might not stop. She said, do you really believe that? Yes, I do. She said, well, let's see. I'll sit with you. Just cry. And I had so much to cry about, right? I had a 30-year marriage to cry about. I had a grandmother going through Alzheimer's to cry about. I had a family that was struggling to cry, a child back in school to cry. I had my own health challenges enough to cry about, not even considering the state of the world yet, right? And she sat with me the entire time. I went through the whole tears, nose, everything that could run was running. And she sat there. She did not offer me a tissue. She did not offer me anything. She just sat with me. And then another time, Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon said to me, Marketa, that is so much that you are holding. And she said, and unfortunately, I can't do anything with it. But what I can do is lift that up with you. Right? I will be with you as you go through your go through. Sometimes what we're feeling is that we are isolated and we're the only ones, but we're not the only ones that are going through this. And I know this is not our Bible study, but there's a scripture that when we got this COVID-19 that I have hung my hat on, and I mean it. And it is Isaiah 26:20. And it says that for my people to go inside, close the door, and basically shelter in place until this pestilence has passed. I'm clear about that. I don't have to show up any place because this pestilence has not yet passed. So there are other ways to do this. Sometimes I think, and Dr. Teresa, help me, sometimes I think that we believe that if we don't show up to do something, it doesn't get done.
Right.
That
Tell the
it
truth.
can't function unless I'm present and on the scene.
Right.
Those are lies and fairy tales.
They are.
Right?
But
Because if we ended up like one of those persons in that truck, I promise you they will continue.
They will continue. And so Dr. Teresa, take it from there. And so what I'm hearing in this first kind of like part of this conversation is in understanding our own individualism and our own individuality as it relates to self and others. I want to go back to that. We're going to get to the other because Dr. Teresa, I know it's on the tip of your tongue because you keep bringing it up, right? Before we can make that connectivity to the other and the individualism and understanding our own being and our sense of agency, I'm hearing you both say that you have to be soft and you got to learn how to cry, right? And there is a text somewhere that says God rewards our tears, right? And so there is something in the name, in this whole framing of crying. And so Dr. Smallwood, take us to this, how we need the other in order to be individual. Does that make sense?
Well, absolutely, it does. First of all, let me just say the tears become seeds. The tears become seeds. If we were to look at the lectionary text for today, it's a question of sowing and reaping. It's like, you sow in tears, right? And then you reap a great harvest. And so this idea of self and other, I'm a Levinasian scholar. So I'm talking about Emmanuel Levinas, who was a Jew captured, by the Third Reich. Levinas talks about the fact that his own sentientness, his own beingness, was never really considered by his captors, but he knew he was human because the dogs acknowledged him. And it was in that context that he came to understand and appreciate his humanness, because another sentient being who was not human, another species, recognized him as other. And he began then to formulate this thing about what ethics is. Ethics is a first philosophy. The first philosophy we ought to have is that we want to do no harm to anyone, right? But we have been created and socialized in a way that all of our individualism is about self, which means then that we care less and less about others. His concept of intersubjectivity is to think of other as a transcendental concept, meaning that if in fact you are to get in touch with yourself, to do so means you have gotten in touch with someone else.
It's as if you can't understand yourself by yourself.
That's
right?
good.
Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu. I am because we are.
Right. That's right. You cannot. I need y'all to hear that. You cannot understand yourself by yourself.
No. You can only know who you are in community. And it has to be a community that you trust, and a community that you are valued as a part of.
Right? So yes, you're getting into this whole notion. The next phase of this, my question is centered around this whole notion of reimagining self-care as it relates to not just individualism, but being collective among one another, and framing how we see forgiveness. Forgiveness is a tool to self-care And we have to reimagine self-care as it is framed. For instance, there's a question I have that I ask people when we deal with forgiveness, whether I'm teaching in leadership or it's been a sermon. I frame it within the sermon in the context of forgiveness in pragmatic ways by asking, are you or do you have any resentment towards anyone right now? And if the answer is yes, then there is unforgiveness lodged inside, and people can't get into their individual selves because they're still focusing on the pain of the other or self. So can you guys kind of help me frame this whole notion around and give us pragmatic ways to think about and reframe and recenter how we see forgiveness as a tool of self-care? Dr. Marketa, I'll start with you.
Okay, so when we talk about forgiveness, sometimes the persons or the entities that are the perpetrators of the harm want to be forgiven immediately, right?
Yes.
As, oh, I'm sorry, won't you forgive me? Well, the person who has been harmed or the body that has been harmed has to first process what that harm was. What was the harm, and how has it impacted me or us as a people? What will rectify it? What will make it just?
Yes.
Right. And because we're about making things right and just, and then talk to me about what it means to forgive. Right. Sometimes as an individual and even as a people, we don't want to forgive folks. We don't want to let them off the hook, so to speak.
Right.
We don't want to let them off easy because then they won't realize what they've done to us. We're not realizing that they're going on about their day to day, regardless of whether we forgive them or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I found that to be the truth. So for me, I would express forgiveness and being able to identify again as the individual, even though we're still talking about the individual, other, and collectives, but we need to be able to say that I release this individual or I release this situation and I will not seek retribution, which is my just due.
Right. It's that retribution piece.
And it is, I release it. But then until we get to that part, it's not to blame the person who has unforgiveness because they may duly have been harmed, but more so to help them get to the place where they realize that the pain is theirs, that they have to be able to find ways to mitigate this pain. They have to be able to find ways to heal through the pain to get to the forgiveness. Forgiveness is not something willy-nilly and fly by night. It's something that we really have to wrestle and struggle with. And, in our faith walks, we want to be forgiven right on the spot. But there are some things, if we're honest about it, in our humanity that require time and space and that community to heal within in order to even talk about what it means to forgive.
Right.
Like even here in this country, all the things that we're going through now.
Absolutely. So you said something very powerful. It takes time and space and that energy. Dr. Freddie Haynes, I remember one of his sermons, he was dealing with forgiveness. He said, I don't have to forgive you. But you said something that was key. It's the release of it.
That's right.
Right?
That's
right? Because there are people who literally feel like I don't have to forgive you, but you need to release it. So there's
right.
Go ahead.
Because the releasing is releasing you.
Right.
It takes the onus off of you. Right. You can say, and I know I may get into some trouble here, but
get in trouble.
There was a young man who was dying, in the process of dying, and he asked his parental spiritual leader to forgive these folks because they don't know what they're doing. And some people have taken that to mean forgive all y'all ever in time. And I'm talking about these right here because they don't have any idea what they are doing. But I assert that individual did not say, I forgive you, which certainly they had the capacity to do because they were still talking, but they reached into a source. Help me, Dr. Teresa. He tapped into a source that was greater than himself to do what he in himself could not or would not do.
And this is what I want to get to, reimagining self-care. Could not or would. There are some people who refuse to forgive, but you still got to learn the essence of release. Let's go ahead and take it to Dr. Smallwood. Come on, help us out with this.
Well, I fundamentally agree with everything Dr. Carmichael has said about it. But I do want to take us to the drill down. Take
us to the drill down.
I'm convinced there's nothing to release if you have guarded your heart. Because out of your heart flows the issues that you make in your life. So then the question becomes, to whom has the offense been given? And the question really is about, who is woe? I think it's woe when you take the offense. If you never take offense, there's nothing to release. But I do know we're human, right? And as human beings, we often fail.
That's right.
Forgiveness starts with ourselves. Can I forgive myself for allowing my emotions to be all caught up in something I had no control over to begin with?
Right.
And can I release myself to not care? To be in a position where I can say, I know you meant that for my harm, but I don't receive it. I'm not offended. I don't hurt behind it, and I'm moving on.
You know what? And this sounds good. And the three of us know that, and some of the people who are watching know that. But what help that person who right now, who on replay will watch this, who are maybe watching now, who struggle with the whole essence of not caring? How can we frame reimagining self-care as it relates to forgiveness and releasing and not caring? Because most of us do care how the other one, particularly some of us, listen, I am a recovering addict of people pleasing. I'm delivered from it. But sometimes I have remnants where I find myself caring, right? I have remnants where I just step back in. So help us, even as leaders. Sometimes we fall short of trying not to not care. So help us a little bit.
So first of all, the example she gave of Jesus on the cross.
That was good.
It's a great example because so many of us are trying to do the work of God in the area of forgiveness. So I don't have a hell or heaven to put you in. I can't forgive your sins. Not like that.
Right.
What I can do is I can live a life before you that suggests the things you formed as weapons against me have not prospered. They have not done the thing. They have not pierced and I have not surrendered my core beliefs. I have not changed my core beliefs about who you are and the fact that you have holy presence just because you don't act a certain way or you act a certain way towards me. See, the important thing for me right now in life is that I live a life before the people that I am here to serve that represents the one that I'm here to serve. And as long as I do that, there's nothing else that really matters. So I think about that all the time. And really and truly, God is keeping the only record I care about.
God is keeping the only record I care about.
But at the same time, I also hear that there are folks, and caring, I don't think is the problem. I think that the amount of our energy and efforts that we invest in something that we cannot control, right, or that we cannot change. We can't change people, and we can't change certain incidents that have happened to us, where there are people who by name could be called to account, and some of them even prosecuted, right, for what they have done. Where I guess for where my wrestling is that, and it's a great place to be able to grow to where Dr. Teresa is, because that's where I want to grow.
Right.
And I also know that there are some places where I care deeply, and I get angry when I see certain things happening that I know just should not be. At the same time, self-care says for me, how much can you put on your shoulders, and how much should you put on your shoulders? Who else can take care of this right now while you take care of yourself right now? Right? Somebody else needs to get into this fray also. Even what we're talking about in the world now, when Brother George Floyd was killed, we saw around the world, even in New Zealand, and the native First Nation peoples that came out and began to do their war dances and began to call up their ancestors in history. Everybody still needs all hands on deck, because the weight is not all ours to shoulder, and the forgiveness is not all ours to give. Right. And when people are doing things out of guilt, that's not. And again, like Dr. Teresa said, that's not even for me to even consider. That's for them and God to consider. What I can do is to help get you in front of, or get you in the position to have this conversation with God, or your higher authority, the one that you bow your knee to, that you answer to. Right.
That's right.
Sometimes we only feel like we answer to ourselves.
Right.
So anything I do, I don't need to be forgiven for, because what?
That's good. You guys, I'm telling you, I'm just excited. Let me ask a question here. What are some pragmatic ways in which leaders across the board, be it clergy, be it attorneys, doctors, be it the restaurant worker, first line response people, what are some pragmatic ways in which leaders can be authentically themselves without neglecting their self-worth and value? I'm going to ask it again. What are some pragmatic ways in which leaders can be authentically themselves without neglecting their self-worth and value? Sometimes I think, we have all these cliches out here, and, fake it till you can make it, and so, no, I don't believe we need to fake nothing until we make it, because we have built up a wall of being fake. So fake until it's hard to be our authentic selves, and for people to have buy-in to that. So how can we, in some pragmatic ways, be authentically ourselves without neglecting our self-worth or value? I think we mentioned and hit on value and worth earlier. So whoever wants to go first.
I'll take a stab at it by saying I grew up in a small area that I described earlier. And the context was one in which the church helped to set the social standards. So people who were church people weren't considered worldly people. And I grew up with this sort of false dichotomy around what it meant to be in the world or of the world.
Right.
And those conflicts really, showed themselves strong in my life. By the time I got into undergraduate school, and people were having sex, and they were going to parties, and they were drinking and doing all these things. And while I had this desire to be this, upstanding human being who could contribute something to society, at the same time, the fun was in the world.
Right.
And I had to find a way to be authentically Teresa.
Right.
In the midst of finding where the fun was, where the popularity was, and eventually give myself permission to be a sorority girl, to go to the parties, to be in the band, to have a glass of wine. And what I came to understand is authenticity is not about outward appearances.
Mm.
Authenticity is about what you feel deep down inside yourself and how that heartbeat becomes the rhythm of your life.
And I agree completely.
Wow.
And one of the other things I would add too is that sometimes in order for us to be authentic, again, we talked about the traditions and the community that we are accountable to or that can hold our truths. And we may need to find another group that can hold our authenticity.
Say more.
So,
Say more.
So, for example, Ronald Richardson has a book entitled "Family Ties That Bind," and who you are in your family. You may believe that to be your authentic self, but sometimes in our families, we can say they thought I was so and so,
right?
But really, I was such and such, right? Mm-hmm. They did not know who I was or who I was becoming. And I had to find my people someplace outside of this environment that nurtured me, that I grew up in. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And so to be authentic, first you need to have a safe place to be authentic.
Right.
To a group of a place and a people who say, come and bring what you have, bring who you are, let it all hang out, and then let's figure out what to do with the pieces. But Absolutely. You're safe here to do that. Sometimes in our families, we're not safe to do that. Sometimes in the communities that raised us and reared us, sometimes different things would happen and people would feel like they could not go to their centralized meeting places, that they could not go to the family functions. So I would say to leaders across any spectrum that they would first need to be able to find a place that they could call their people, that they can be honest with themselves about who they are, what they do, right? And not feel like they are being judged or that they're not being accepted. Right. Once they have this safe place to be, then that's their lane of authenticity. I would not say to them to go to your job and try to let it all hang out. That's not wisdom. But you need a place that you can, right? And I'm not saying that letting it all hang out is a negative thing. Now, you know what you do, and you know whether or not it's negative or not. But you might find that you need to be in the group of folks who are poets or artists, because that's where you can just let all of your artistic stuff go. What I think, Victoria, is a challenge that I had, and I'll share this if I can. Mm-hmm. I had a friend who was attending a particular place of worship, and the person that was the leader at the time called for a certain group of people to self-identify and to come forward for prayer to be delivered from a particular way of being in the world. Mm-hmm. And my friend called and it was in tears. And I said, why are you crying? And they told me what had happened. I said, well, did you go down there for that foolishness? And they said, yeah. I said, why? Right. Why would you do it? And why would you pay for the privilege? Right. So even then they were in a space, but they weren't in a space to be their authentic selves. And they bought into this, this way of being, this perpetration of a fraud, so to speak. Right. I wonder, what would you do if you could be free? Absolutely. That's what it's about, being free. And if you could be free, then you will find your people. But as long as you are trying to dress it up and be looking like somebody else, you're going to find those folks and still not be with your people. So I would say to any leader, you need to have a safe place where you can be yourself, speak your truth, and be all right and be safe, knowing that you have clay feet and the people that you're with know that your feet are made of clay also. That they're not putting you up on pedestals that you cannot possibly stay on. Right. And don't hop on top of any either.
You know, I got to say this because she speaks truth, yes. No doubt about it.
Yes.
But the reality that I found and you know, the dichotomy that I lived most of my life forced me to understand that there are no true safe spaces, right? That there is the capacity to have your trust misappropriated no matter where you are. And so authenticity at a point becomes this thing that you have for yourself. So I had to fight. I felt like the woman in The Color Purple. I had to fight my
Right.
Because in those so-called safe spaces, sometimes people want to exploit you or see how they can manipulate you.
Right.
And I got to a point where I necessarily couldn't find a safe space, but I created within myself a brave space.
That's good.
And a brave space becomes this place where your authenticity fits wherever you are. So even though the Baptist folk who ordained me, who shared the gospel, who planted the seed of salvation, decided that I should be rejected because of my sexuality, I bravely stood. And at this point in time, I could care less.
Absolutely.
Because I know who I am and I know whose I am.
That's right.
That's the beautiful thing. That's what's beautiful. And that's where I think where you're trying to get, Victoria, because if every person could get there, then it's not a question of showing up in your authenticity because you are authentic. This is just who I am.
Absolutely.
Right.
But you said if everybody can get there, people are still at the location here and still trying to get there. And so let me share a very, very short story. That, I've been the same gender I've been loving women for a very long time, but I also was loving men too. So, I'm
mad you said it like that, Victoria.
I'm no respecter of persons, but in my old life, I was engaged 5 times. They called me the runaway, the original runaway bride. For real. My behind knew I didn't need to be down. Nobody's out trying to marry someone when I knew. But I came out at seminary, and how it happened was I was in this class with my wonderful loving brothers, Church of God in Christ brothers, and we had to read this book, The Heart is a Little to the Left. And it's a very thin book, and it dealt with Sodom and Gomorrah and of course all that. And I just got tired of talking about, I ain't never seen what no man is interested in another man, no woman, blah, 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 blah. So I stood up in the middle of the class and went the hell off. And before I knew it, I was like, but I had not been out. And I was like, so my girlfriend was behind me. So what you gonna do now? She's just and I realized in that moment, I became my authentic self. And I became what Bishop Flunder has been preaching to a lot of us at TFAM in that time, free. And I really understood what it meant, what emancipation really meant. And I really understood what being liberated. I thought I knew liberation as a Black woman, as an entrepreneur, as one making money at one point, and blah, 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 blah. But I really understood liberation the moment I became my authentic self and challenged the text and became and did what they call hermeneutic of suspicion and challenged the traditional ways of framing what marriage was between whomever when Black folks couldn't even get married. So and so I became my authentic self and I became liberated. And I'll be 58 in a few weeks. And I'm telling you, I can't turn around. I cannot go back, right? And I won't go back, and I don't have to go back. And but everyone's not there. And so getting to that, finding pragmatic ways of getting there is not easy for some people, because some people will lose their jobs. Some people still are dealing with internalized whatever, whether it's internalized. I dealt with that for years, internalized homophobia, where I was in traditional mega churches and basically was told I would never ordain a lesbian or I would never do this and that, so the pain came with it. So I agree with Dr. Smallwood that this is something that has to be a lived experience of freedom. Like Dr. Marketa also said about this whole notion of liberation. And so one of the pragmatic ways I hear you guys saying in this self-care is learning how to be authentically yourself in your lived experience on a daily basis, right? We have to find our authentic selves every day. And speak on that. Somebody wants to.
And like Dr. Smallwood said, and you have to sometimes fight for it.
Yes.
Right. You have to and stand in it. And then that whole question of, so now what you're going to do? Live and not die. So that's what I'm going to do.
That's the whole thing. So how do we live on purpose and not die in shame or guilt or resentment? Because we all had to fight, particularly same gender loving people. And for the audience, Dr. Smallwood already talked about her sexuality. I'm same gender loving. Dr. Marketa has a loving husband at home. And so
she's got some fantastic people in her life that are same gender loving. And I was in this struggle before I even knew it was a struggle.
Absolutely.
Right. I have a person that I love dearly, and he's out already, so it's not telling his story or his business. But I have a cousin that I love like you have nobody's business. And we used to do stuff like for Halloween, we would dress up like Diana Ross and the Supremes, and he would have to be Diana Ross. And I was so, I mean, with the whole pillowcases and hair flowing. And right. I love this man so much. What I realized in my theology, even in my middle school years, was this. If you say that God hates my cousin and that my cousin is going to die and go to hell, then I have no interest in heaven at all. And I have no interest in a God who would do that to my cousin.
Amen.
Because
Amen.
I know my cousin loves God.
Amen.
And
Amen.
if you would do that to him, I ain't got no use for you. I need a better God than that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. You know what? That's a whole nother conversation. So I'm going to so we have room for probably one more question. Do any of our viewers have any questions? This is a very good conversation that's going to end soon. I hate for it to end soon, but I want to get one more question out as it relates to self-care. So one of the things Dr. Raphaelia Michael in 2018 that I've been holding on to this says self-care is an activity that we do deliberately. Self-care is a deliberate act. Bottom line, it is deliberate. And as leaders, we have to be deliberate about our self-care. Even if one of the pragmatic ways is to continue to fight to get to it. Right? And so he says that self-care is an activity that we do deliberately in order to take care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. And I'm going to add spiritual as well. It is the key to improving our mood and reducing anxiety. It is a way to keep relationships with self and others, right? And so reimagining others in self-care, we talked about that earlier, has become extinct for a lot of people, but we already hit on that. How can we reintroduce and reimagine self-care as leaders to the people before we leave here tonight? How can we reimagine through, we've already said through our tears, we already said forgiveness and dealing with our resentment, but how can we deal with forgiveness as it relates to mindfulness? We already talked about self-worth and value. But mindfulness, one thing I want to touch on, I got a note over here and I don't want to forget it. I have kind of reimagined how we talk about finding balance. We cannot find balance because finding balance from my perspective means that we are dividing ourselves in equal parts to everything that we do. And there is no way we can give everything equal parts in our life, period. I can't give my wife 100%. I don't have nothing left to give to nobody else, right? And so what I read somewhere and I forgot who and what I was reading. It was a while ago. But we can find balance. I mean, not balance, harmony. Finding harmony places us where within that lived framework and experience, we give harmony to the things we can give harmony to, but not balance. Because I cannot give 20% to 5 people, equal parts of me. I just can't. It just doesn't work like that. And so I would like, as we close for the next 5 minutes, for the both of you to take a couple of minutes to talk about finding, whether you want to talk about harmony and balance, where you want to still deal with the forgiveness part, or mindfulness. And mindfulness is a whole different ball game. I don't know. I'm just getting into practicing mindfulness. And I'm not Hindu or Buddhist or anything like that, but I do like practicing not just the meditation, but mindful eating now, and mindful thinking, and mindful breathing. And I'm really getting into the mindfulness game, which says that mindfulness is an act of bringing one full attention to what is happening in the present. Mindfulness is bringing our full attention, our authentic full attention, to what's happening in the moment. And then it says that we bring our minds back to our bodies, and it come into the present moment with ourselves and others. And so let's just wrap this whole self-care. We couldn't really touch everything we wanted to touch around whatever you guys want to say towards the end around self-care, self-worth, self-reflection. I had some other stuff on here, but let's go.
Well, I'll say at the outset that this has been such a rich conversation, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. I turned 61 on November 23rd, and so I'm quite mindful of the aging process. Taking more notice of the lines and wondering about, what is it going to be like as a single woman, growing older and older. And I've decided every morning that I'll get in the mirror and affirm myself.
Yes.
And so I just look at myself in the mirror and say, girl, you are like fine wine. I will do that, not because I think so highly of myself, but because I'm worth it. And I believe that it's affirmations, the capacity for us to engage ourselves. I'll get my sage out and I'll burn, and I'll smell it into my body and exhale it out. And I'll take deep breaths, and I think about what my day is going to be like. And I think about how when I show up, I'm showing up as this authentic Teresa. Those are the things that, if we can just engage ourselves with some kind of ritual practice that is important to us. Not everybody likes to burn candles, but I like to burn candles.
Me too. Yes.
I like to sometimes just sit in the dark with a candle and think about my day, or have something poetic. I love Audre Lorde, so I take her poetry with me places, even her prose. And I say stuff like, if you don't define yourself for yourself, you'll get eaten up. Those are the things that really help me stay grounded in a place. Because when you think about harmony is a concept that talks about various voices coming together, but it's not disharmonic because they blend. They make a sound that can live together. Dissonance is when you got a lot of different sounds and they don't connect. So I'm looking for the things in my life that can be harmonious.
Yes.
They can't all take all my time.
That's
but
right.
They can blend together and sing the song of my life.
I love it.
Joy.
Jesus.
And peace and happiness and prosperity and the stuff that makes for good living.
The stuff that makes for good living, all of that. Harmonious. You framed that metaphorically in a way that I'm only gonna give you credit one time. I'm just gonna tell you. I'm only give you credit one time, and then I'm still in the doggone thing. But my little harmony versus balance thing, you just messed me up about the choir. And I'm a choir director and a choir worship leader and all that, and I still didn't bring that. Wow.
No.
Oh,
I want you to say it one more time.
She wouldn't be able to do it the same way.
Doctor, come on, say it to me one more time. Say it to me one more time. She said, "What the song of my life?" Come on.
Take us on with the last comment, Dr. Marketa.
Oh my gosh. Where do you go after that? Right? So I just want to say again, this has been fantastic. And Dr. Victoria, thank you for inviting me. And Dr. Smallwood, my goodness, I've always wanted to be in conversation with you around anything. And so I'm glad for this opportunity. So self-care, I think that when we really look at it, it comes down to finding again that you as an individual are worth the time and taking the time that you need and filling that time as best you can with things that nourish you, that encourage you, that celebrate and honor who you are at your core, and that can give you a sense of peace and harmony within yourself. It's not selfish. It's not at the expense of other people, but it is at the necessity of you.
That's right.
Right. And if we are clear about that, and it doesn't matter where we are in faith traditions or anything like that. As a chaplain at UCLA, I served everybody, right? Everybody. And I was able to understand that while my mindset was, you got to work, you got to produce, you got to work, you got to produce, my colleagues were saying, wait, stop, sit down, take an hour. I said, an hour? Yeah, just to sit and reflect, They're like, yes. And I was like, anybody got time for no reflecting? We got work to do. But when I realized that my self would run out eventually, that I would not have the kind of beautiful moments that Dr. Teresa is talking about.
Absolutely.
I don't want to be leaving here with regrets about how I treated myself. Right. And so whatever it takes, I did the whole Sabbath bath and all of that stuff, and it works for me. Right. And being able to be in a place, and you all helped me with something tonight, and I'll share it with you all off line, but it's self-care has to come into play when you realize that you need to have a place that, and a being where you can tell other people no.
That's right.
And mean it. Sometimes tell yourself no. That your phone, does your phone have to ring all day, all night? Do you remember a time where we only had house phones?
Absolutely.
So if you were not at home, somebody had to leave a message, and you'd get it when you got home, maybe before the voice recorders.
Right.
So not realizing that now you are on 24/7. Don't be on 24/7. Don't let the news, that because it's on 24/7, don't let that rest in your spirit, regardless of where you are. I'm talking about not even faith traditions. Don't let that interfere with your well-being, because it will if you let it. But you have to be intentional about you.
That's right. Well, listen, everyone, you've heard it from two of the best women here on earth. Listen, we were thoroughly blessed to hear from Dr. Teresa Smallwood and from Dr. Marketa Carmichael. Listen, these are two wonderful people. You can find them at VUU and at Vanderbilt. Listen, if you want to look them up, you can look them up. And listen, we are so grateful for you taking the time to listen to us tonight. But I just want to say two things in closing. One is that I wanted to hit on, should self-care be planned or impromptu? And how does that work? But we'll take that home and think about that. But self-care must be an authentic practice of yours. It must be an authentic practice of forgiveness, practicing self-care to your own worth and value, seeing yourself the way God sees you and not the way other people may see you, and not the way you see yourself, particularly if it's negative. But if it's positive, and if it's negative, find ways to affirm yourself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I love myself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I love myself. I used to say that in the mirror to myself all the time. And so find ways to affirm yourself. Self-care should never be forced. You should never have to make time for yourself. You should take the time. Never have to make time for yourself. Take the time. Self-care says you need to show up for yourself before you can show up for others. All right. So that's been, I'm going to ask Cara Solutions, my powered by Cara. We have empowered Essentials Unleashed have been powered by Cara Solutions. Sue, can you come on and let us, the people, see who you are? Yes, yes, yes. This is Sue Webley. Say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
All right. This is Cara Solution. Listen, she is my producer. She does our technical production, and she is the bomb diggity. I tell you, she is the one who is responsible for a lot of people's work, but particularly Essentials Unleashed. She's branding me. Let's put it that way. She's branding me, and she is making my brand. So if you're interested in her, tell them how they can get a hold of you, please.
I'm gonna throw this up and make it easy for the people. So we offer administrative business and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith-based and community-based organizations. And so if you want more information about the services that we offer, you can go over to www.cara-solutions.com. I'll be more than happy to talk with you.
All right. Listen, there was someone, Michelle Stimson. We will get in touch with you offline. I hear that you have a question. Listen, God loves you the way you are, and you are God's creation. All right. And so we will talk offline about what that means. All right. Take care. God bless you. See you next time.